Good morning, everybody. I'm going to hopefully do a quick Cryptopher slash truck talk commentary here uh, because over the last couple weeks, I've been telling people be careful about cryptocurrencies. I love cryptocurrencies, but I said you may not want to be buying in at these levels. If you go back to my videos, you'll see that I said that. It's going to require you to listen a little bit, which is good for me. I want you to listen to my videos. And you'll see that I said that. I didn't give any advice on what to do. I just said, you might want to be cautious. And sure enough, cryptos have been dropping quite a bit lately. I'm still bullish on them, but like I said, there's going to be a liquidity crisis at some point. And I said that at the beginning of the year, and at the end of last year. I said, be careful. A liquidity crisis will be coming at some point. Especially when the Fed raises interest rates, what that does is it makes borrowing money expensive. And when people are speculating in any asset, whether that's cryptocurrencies, real estate, stocks, gold, silver, they do it. We're in a gambling society basically because nothing is backed by anything. So people know subconsciously that the value of their currencies are going to be dropping because of what the central banks do with them. And so they are more willing to gamble and take a chance on something. So what they do is they tend to borrow money to finance purchases that their own cash cannot buy, right? So they get cash from somebody else. And that's why debt has skyrocketed around the world. China is under tremendous amounts of debt at this point. And my last video was talking about how China's interbank rate is in the thousands. So banks are charging thousands of percent in China to each other to lend because they see each other as a major risk. And that is reminiscent of 2008 where, we didn't get into the 1,000%, but the banks started raising interest rates on each other to the point because they didn't trust each other. Because here they had the rating agencies like Moody's, Fitch, and S&P giving all the banks and all these derivative stacked corporations high ratings, AAA plus ratings, when in reality, the derivatives on their books were showing that these guys are bankrupt and they're about to go under, pretty badly because of their leverage. They're so heavily geared. And so investors are pouring money into these companies, and all of a sudden you find out, oh, they're bankrupt. What's going on? They got negative earnings. What's going on? Now, it's almost the same thing that's going on right now, but a little bit different. It's not related to mortgages anymore. It's more related to corporate debt because a lot of corporations have been buying back their shares, and they will often borrow too to do that. And this goes back to something that I heard Jim Rickards say. He was promoting his book, and I listened to a number of different people interviewing him because he's on a book tour right now, and he's promoting his book, and it's called Aftermath. But he started talking about how the United States, when it first started out, went into severe debt because it, went into this war with Great Britain to separate from it. We had this revolution. So we had to finance our colonial army or our militias, right? Basically to fight the British redcoats. And it plunged the United States into severe debt. So our founding fathers in our country were afraid that we wouldn't be able to pay it back because we didn't really have the means to do it. We were basically bankrupt. And so Thomas Jefferson basically toyed with the idea of defaulting on our debt. But James Madison came up and basically suggested that, no, don't default on the debt. In fact, borrow more, increase the amount of debt, and use that as a revolving, debt to pay off the other debt, right? So they create this revolving debt system. And by doing so, you paid off the other debts. And so you raise your credit score with those older lenders. It's basically the birth of a Ponzi scheme, So I don't remember the year that Charles Ponzi was alive. So I don't know who came first, whether it was Charles Ponzi or James Madison, but I'll have to go back and look at that because if James Madison came first, he's actually the creator of the Ponzi scheme, if that's the case. But that may not be the case. Most likely Charles Ponzi was before James Madison, and he created the pyramid scheme, in other words, where they pile debt upon debt upon debt upon debt, and whoever lends last to the unworthy borrower is the one left holding the bag. And all the lenders before that last lender are actually getting paid off by the money of the lender at the end. So this is what governments do. It's called kicking the can down the road, right? Their debt comes due. They don't have the money to pay it, but they borrow immediately before their credit rating is affected from somebody new, and they use the money from the new lender to service and completely pay off the debt from the prior lender. So it's an unbelievable scheme, but people do that as well because governments do that. And because the Federal Reserve prints money for the United States, all central banks do that for their corresponding governments, but I'm just giving an example of the United States. They devalue the currency because currency has to be created by something of value. You have to be doing something in order to create currency. So most people sell their labor to generate money. They create wealth that way, right? Because what happens is somebody starts a business, right? And without employees, that business doesn't really make anything. Now we're getting into the era of robotics, so robots will eventually replace employees. But back in the old days, they didn't have the technology, so they had people basically slave for businesses, right? It wasn't really slaving. You're actually a business in yourself if you're a laborer, right? You're selling your labor, right? It's capitalism. So you sell your labor to the highest bidder, basically, or the one who wants to purchase that labor, and you may have different skills. So the more skills you have, the better options you have at selling your labor. If you have few skills, you're kind of stuck with what you can sell, where you can sell your labor. Okay, so this is the whole point of why you should educate yourself as an employee. Okay, so anyway, back in the days, in order to create a product, a good, or even a service, a company had to hire people, because a lot of the times a business owner does not have enough hands, feet to build all the things, right? It takes a lot of leverage to do that, right? And then in the old days, it wasn't leveraged through borrowing money. It was leveraged through using other people, right? There are multiple forms of leverage. And so they would hire people so that they could do like a force multiplier, right? They multiply their abilities. Robert Kiyosaki talks about this a lot of the time. He calls it OPM or OPT or other, and the church. When I go to Catholic church, we talk about that as well. The church is always asking people to donate their time, their treasure, and their talent, right? That's the same thing with what business owners do. They make money off of OPM, other people's money, other people's time, and other people's efforts or talents, right? And so they leverage that, right, in order to make a product. If the business owner tried to do that by themselves, let's say they had 1 million customers, there's no way that business owner as one person is going to be able to make enough products to service 1 million customers, right? So they need to get multiple employees so that they can create enough units of a good in order to service the demand of their customers, right? Otherwise, if you're by yourself, you're the only person in your business, and you can only make 200 items, and you have 1 million customers that want 1 million items, you're going to lose the 999,900 people that you could have serviced otherwise. That's a lot of people you're missing out on and you're losing business on. And what that tends to do is that tends to piss off customers who will never come back because they wanted your good or your service and you just weren't able to give it to them. So it disappoints them and they just go, you know what, I'm going to go somewhere else, or I'll just do without it because I'm not getting it anyway, right? So leverage has been subconsciously in our minds at all times. Now, today, people use different types of leverage because what has happened is education has slipped in the United States. And the Democrats and globalist Republicans have allowed illegal immigrants who are low-skilled, low-wage workers to come into this country. And what it's done is they've outcompeted the intelligent people, right? Here, people have gone to college, they've educated themselves, and now when they go out into the workplace, there are no jobs for them because the illegal immigrants can do those jobs cheaper. And so it forces people to go back into college. But while they're in college, they're going to graduate school now to get maybe a master's. They got their bachelor's, but they're not getting hired because they're priced out of the market by these immigrants. And they go back to get their master's degree or their PhD, their doctoral degree, whatever it is. And now they have all this debt, and it's hard to find a job where, they're going to get hired. So it's tough, so they try to take any job they can get. And so they end up competing with the immigrants. And when you have high competition, the chances of your getting something is very slim. And you end up being in the rat race, right? And education doesn't really teach you how to really make money as an entrepreneur or as an investor. It teaches you how to be an employee. This is what Robert Kiyosaki is always talking about. A business owner or an investor always leverages OPM, other people's money, other people's time, and other people's efforts and talent, right? And the employee tries to do everything themselves. There's he does the cash flow quadrant, right? You've got the employee who tries to do it themselves, and they get the highest tax pay. It's like 50% on their income. The government taxes the crap out of them. Or they start their own business because they're educated. They're like a doctor or an attorney, but they're the only one, right? So the business is basically the doctor and the attorney. And again, it's just them, and they think they're leveraging their education. But the government has really screwed that up. I know that through my own father. My father, when I was a young boy, he was a plastic surgeon. And at that time, the healthcare system was really good, and doctors were making bank. They were very wealthy. So my dad became very successful as a singular physician in owning his own clinic and working in hospitals. But the government changed when President Clinton came in. He and his wife started HMOs. They started it up. I shouldn't say they started it because it actually started with Richard Nixon, but they actually kicked it into high gear, and they changed the whole insurance structure for the medical profession and for doctors. And what happened after that is many doctors could not afford to have their own clinic. They had to become group doctors in hospitals because the malpractice insurance companies basically came in and destroyed the medical field, where they started telling doctors how much they can charge. They were capping the doctors because everyone complained the doctors were making so much money. So the communism came in, and the insurance, what basically happened was there was a transfer of wealth. This is what communists are great at. They transfer wealth. So they don't make it so that the people who actually do things benefit from their own effort. They make it so that other people benefit from your effort. In a way, it's similar to the OPM issue, but it's not an honest way of doing it. You're basically stealing other people's effort rather than leveraging other people's effort. So like that, the difference is Robin Hood versus Henry Ford, okay? The story of Robin Hood is basically a communist story. The communists love Robin Hood because Robin Hood, they make Robin Hood seem so noble, right? And in the story, the actual Robin Hood was noble because you had this evil king who was abusing his power and hurting peasants, right? So the communists like to associate that with capitalism and businesses, where business owners, they say, are evil. But no, a business owner is someone who has an idea on how to solve the world's problems, while at the same time being able to make an income off of that because it's their idea, right? So they want to be able to feed their families and solve the world's problem at the same time so that everybody, it's mutually beneficial. The Robin Hood story was the king was just trying to get money off of the poor people, the peasants, and he was abusing them. And so Robin Hood, and it was to the point where he was murdering the peasants and in order to keep them in line and abusing them, like literally like they were slaves to this king. And he had a sheriff, the sheriff of Nottingham, which would enforce his fascistic control over his kingdom, over his vassals. It's a vassal state, which is, in other words, it's slavery because the king controls everybody through money power, right? And Robin Hood, being a peasant but a skilled one, he had a specific skill, which was his archery, right? He's known for splitting his own arrows, right? And always hitting the bullseye. He was basically Hawkeye, right? He went up and he was able to wrest control back from the king, get the money back for the people. He would steal from the rich and give to the poor. The communists love that idea, but the communists go about it the wrong way. They go to the people who actually have the great idea to help everyone while mutually benefiting, and they steal from them both their ideas, their motivation, their spirits, and their wealth, and they redistribute it to other people who didn't earn it, right? This is what we're seeing today with the illegal immigration. They're giving all these healthcare benefits, all these tax benefits, everything to the illegal immigrants. Meanwhile, they're impoverishing American citizens. And it's not just happening here in America. It's a globalist ideal. This is why you see it in Europe also. They brought in, quote, refugees who were created by globalists, a.k.a. President Obama, Hillary Clinton, and John Kerry, because they wanted, quote, regime change. They justified killing their kings by saying that they're abusing their people, but by going to the Middle East and killing their kings, like killing Muammar Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, Mubarak in Egypt, they destabilized those countries because there was no real person who had the skills to be the leader of that country, and so it disintegrated into chaos and civil war, and many of those people were displaced because terrorists, the strongmen, came in and started abusing everyone, and people fled those countries, and you had a refugee crisis that occurred, and the refugees ended up going to Europe. And Europe, as globalist leaders took control of Europe, they started taking people in to the country and giving them benefits. So it's the same all around the world. They're doing this all around the world. When I traveled to China about 7 years ago, I saw the exact same thing also in China. They had people coming across borders from North Korea, from multiple nations that were impoverished that surround the nation, and they also had quote terrorists that were smuggling people. So it's all around the world because of globalism and communism that helps that, because communism redistributes wealth. So I saw that in my dad's industry. He went from wealthy to becoming a struggling physician. Now, struggling meaning struggling to make more money. The money that he made, my mom and my dad managed very well for themselves. But any new money that came in was not easy to come by, because now it was becoming outflow. It was now being transferred from the physicians to the insurance companies, who were not physicians. They're not medically trained, and yet by insurance, they're evaluating the risk of not getting paid back, or of someone dying before you get money, or all these risks that the underwriters make fuzzy math about. And they were telling the doctors, you cannot charge more than this, and you have these multiple options. You're going to choose this option to give to the patient, and also you're going to have to pay huge malpractice insurance to protect yourself from bad medical practices. And it killed a lot of the doctors, to the point where any new doctors starting out could not start their own clinics, and they had to join hospitals. And the hospitals basically, it's like socialism. The hospitals had like a group plan that would cover all the doctors, and it lowered the cost of the insurance. And so now the doctors were now becoming slaves to the hospitals. And what happened because of that is economic incentive was destroyed, to the point where you started to see more people dying in hospitals, and the bedside manner of the physicians, in other words, the way they treated their patients, went in the toilet as well, because there's no economic incentive. When someone is making money, they feel good, they're generous, they're kind. When they're struggling, they're more bitter, and they're more angry, and they're more worried, and they're less generous and nice to other people. So the physicians of today became employees and no longer business owners, And so the incentive was different. And because the communists transferred that incentive, the quality of healthcare greatly diminished from that point on, and you started to see people dying due to complications to surgery. What does that mean? Complications to surgery means they died from some kind of infection. It wasn't of natural causes. There's natural causes, there's complications to surgery, and then there's malpractice, right? Complication to surgery typically means that there was some kind of bacteria that was either transferred from patient to patient, or there was some kind of, the doctor was not incentivized to do as well. He's got insurance covering him, and he's not making much money, so he could care less. He looks at his patient like, oh, you're just a file number now, as opposed to the business owner doctor who looked at that patient as, you are my income source, you are my asset, and so I will seek your best interest because I want you to continue to provide for me and my family. But the doctor who's not making as much money, it's just like you're going through the motions, right? Because there's no economic incentive for you to do your best, right? You work at what everybody else is working at. And so you have a lot more deaths and a lot more, it's really malpractice in hospitals these days. I don't really want to go to a hospital ever. I hope to never get sick enough where I need to go to the hospital because I'm worried that'll be the end of me. And that's not really a bad statement about physicians. I know there's still good physicians out there. Maybe it is a bad statement about physicians, about their attitudes, because the attitude has really changed. Where my dad, as a surgeon and a physician, he would get angry if anyone helping him in surgery they scrubbed themselves clean with antimicrobial soap to destroy any bacteria, fungus, or viruses or anything that's on their skin, so that when they're in surgery, they don't cause a complication to surgery. If they accidentally touch something and he saw it out of the corner of his eye, he would chew them out like crazy. What are you doing? And it wasn't because he was worried about his liability. It was because he was worried. He was genuinely worried about the welfare of his patient. So that has changed these days. You'll see doctors who they'll put gloves on because it's going through the motions, right? To protect themselves from the patient. They'll touch a patient and they'll start talking with the nurse, and the nurse will be like, oh, doctor, you need to look at this other patient. And the doctor will go, oh, okay. And he'll go over there and he'll forget to swap gloves or to wash his hands. And this is where you get disease spreading in hospitals, where you get your complications to surgery, where you get also because they're overprescribing drugs without actually caring to watch over those drugs. Some of the antibiotics, they take it and they prescribe it, and the patient is not faithful in taking it. So the bacteria or the virus or whatever it is becomes resistant to the antibiotic or whatever medication, and you start to get these resistant strains like vancomycin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, which is the Versa, or your MRSA, which is a very similar. It's just a Staphylococcus aureus bacteria that's resistant to a different antibiotic, and Cipro resistance. So you're getting super bugs that are resistant to other things else. So communism sounds great, but what it's doing effectively is it's destroying healthcare, it's destroying the economy, it's destroying everything else. So swinging back, I really digressed on that, and I hope you're following me. So everybody is now just going through the motions. Rather than earning things off of their efforts and off of other people's efforts and other people's money and other people's time, they're only doing it off other people's money because we just don't have those skills anymore. The communists have just given away the country to the unskilled, and they make it sound like we're racist by saying so. No, we used to vet people when they would come to this country because we wanted the best to come here so that our country could be the best. And by making the country the best, anyone who came here could be unskilled, but they had to do it legally, and it would control the flow of unskilled labor coming here so that it would give them time to obtain skills, to skill up, in other words, and then to integrate with society and be a benefit. But when you flood a country with unskilled labor, you dilute the skills in the country, and it becomes a liquidity crisis in skills as well, because everything of value becomes diluted. All right, so what happened in Bitcoin? What happened in cryptocurrencies? You started to see rallies. What do you see in precious metals? You started to see rallies in all these assets, and cryptocurrencies all of a sudden went off a cliff. And the government, of course, because each different type of investment is a different avenue for wealth to flow. They know the economies around the world, the global economy is slowing, so they want that. If you think of cash flow like water pressure flow, right? They don't want all this waters distributed in different pipe routes, okay? I'm looking the wrong way. I should be looking at the camera here, but they don't want all that wealth distributed in different avenues, because it kills the wealth pressure or the water pressure or the cash flow pressure in the economy, and you're seeing a low liquidity flow, basically a low pressure of the flow of cash. So what do? You had President Trump come out and say, I'm not a fan of Bitcoin, and the Libra coin for Facebook is basically Facebook acting like a bank. Well, he's killing that cryptocurrency pipeline. And when you kill that pipeline, what happens? The water pressure that was in there now adds to these other pipelines, right? And then he goes, well, you look at gold and silver, and JP Morgan suppresses silver price, and they short gold. You're finding out that there are traders that are getting caught manipulating gold and silver. But by doing so, they hurt the precious metal pipeline. So people will sell out of that. But some people made money in that, right? Because they rallied as people got scared. But now they need that money to pay off other bills, so they start to sell that, right? So now all that water pressure from these two is going to add into this. Little by little, the government is controlling where the flow of money is going, and the Federal Reserve. When they kill these others by going out and jawboning or talking about them negatively in the marketplace, people start to put their money into these other ones that are traditionally there. And guess what? Real estate's probably going to be one of them. I'd say certain commodities will be affected by it. And then what will the Federal Reserve do? They will cut interest rates unless they're globalist. If they're globalist and they want to destroy Trump, they will keep rates the same, or even worse, they may raise them. And if they do that, boy, we're going to see a depression that's going to be so horrible. People will starve to death. And I'm not being over dramatic about that. We had rains, talking about liquidity. Weather has destroyed our crops in the United States. It's destroying crops all around the world, not just in the United States. And it takes time to grow food, right? So there's no way, even if you cut interest rates, that just because you make money available, you're going to make food available, because you can't necessarily, just because you have pour money into something, make it grow. You can pour money into seeds, but it doesn't necessarily make it grow faster. A seed grows at its own pace. Even if you just make the nutrition environment better by pouring money into fertilizers, plant food, water. But if the weather has totally destroyed the soil by flooding the area, you have fungal issues. You have fungus. And then you have pesticide issues. And you have antifungal issues. You're pouring chemicals now, and that can kill the plant too, or it can poison the people. So quality of the food goes down. I mean, this is getting real complicated. I don't want to say too much in this video, but it's already gotten to 30 minutes. I want it to be 5 minutes, and unfortunately, it all connects. So what I'm saying is we are probably at that liquidity crisis point. And the only way you can affect the liquidity issue when it comes to cash and investment is lower interest rates. By lowering interest rates, you make borrowing money cheaper, and you start to flood those pipelines, and the water pressure goes up. And by making the water pressure go up, you'll see certain assets like the stock market go up. You might even see the bond market go up, which is kind of counterintuitive. But they're going to probably head to, first they'll head to zero interest rate policy so that it costs you nothing to borrow money. But eventually, they may go into negative interest rate policy, which makes absolutely no sense to me. They're claiming that you're going to have to, as a lender, you're going to pay people to borrow money from you rather than have those people pay you to borrow your money. What a world that would be. I'm still trying to figure out how that would work. That really kills incentive. But supposedly, the reason that works is that people are willing to pay for security. I don't know what that means. Perhaps the governments will borrow the money and you will pay them to borrow your money so that you're paying for the security of the government to hold your money and do things with it. Oh boy, that's real communism. When you're really relying on government to do everything for you, that's tough. That to me is horrible. Relying on other people to do things for you is, I mean, we saw it in Gilroy yesterday. Everybody relies on law enforcement and security to keep them safe. And the Democrats have taken guns from us. They're making it harder to buy guns and to buy ammunition in California. And they've scared everyone about firearms to make everyone think that firearms are the enemy, so they don't want to own them. So by relinquishing your own strength and your own skill and your own ownership of firearms, you are now relying upon somebody else's skill, somebody else's ownership, and somebody else's response time to get to you, to save you from the bad guy who decides to misuse that tool to kill you. And this is how people die. Albeit there were only 3 people, minimum casualties, just because law enforcement was able to take out this guy. It's possible that you might have only had 1 person die if everybody was armed. Because now one guy with a gun is coming into a crowd where everybody has guns. Well, it becomes a shootout, yes, but the multiple people see him shooting, they can all turn to him and end him quick. As opposed to now, all these people are sitting ducks. This guy's got a gun. He's chasing everybody. And you got to wait for this other guy at the end to figure out, oh my gosh, this guy's shooting. I got to run over there and help them. It's going to take forever for the response to come and save you. Now, albeit it was a minute. But in a minute, he killed 3 people and supposedly injured 15. I haven't looked at any updates. There may be more people injured. But it was enough. He injured enough people where it was a significant number of people. So taking things away, again, they redistribute ownership, they redistribute wealth. And redistribute ownership to the government is communist. Redistribution of wealth to the government is also communist. And they tell the people that they're robbing the rich to give to the poor. But in reality, they're robbing from the rich who are good and giving to the people in government who are not creative. They're just parasites, and it's making them rich. And the money never gets to the poor. It's only getting to the people that the poor people vote for, because they give them this great line that they're out for their good. They're out for the good of the poor. And the reality is they're only out for themselves. And the poor people vote for it. And then the poor people can't figure out, why is the price of gasoline going up? Why is the cost of healthcare going up? Why am I paying more in sales tax? Why do I pay more in income tax? Why are my registration fees going up? Why are there all these bonds going out in order for us to repair the freeways? Why is there another bond being floated for us to build our police station? Why is there our water bill going up? They can't figure out why the costs are going up, but they did it to themselves. Because again, they're not skilled, they're not educated. And the communists have gotten into everything. They've gotten into education. They've told everybody it's better. You're racist if you don't think for yourself, right? Or if you think for yourself, sorry. You're racist if you think for yourself, right? Because you're selfish. You're exclusive to only you, right? You don't care about other people. And that's not true. It's not true. Wealthy people are the most generous. And our economy was set up so that wealthy people, even if they're not generous, can benefit by being generous. It's called philanthropy. They can actually lower their tax liabilities by donating their money to poor people in good causes. And the government will give them tax credits so they don't have to pay tax. This is why wealthy people don't pay tax. And then the communists come in and say, oh, look, they're making billions and they're not paying taxes. Well, because they're actually using that money for good things. A poor person cannot go out into society and improve the road system. They have no money. They can't go and donate to a hospital like St. Jude, for example, so that people can get better health care and not have to worry about to pay the bills. No, only wealthy people can do that. And if you start to take money from wealthy people who are generous and you give it to people who don't deserve it, and they're selfish and they're power hungry, so power hungry that when somebody gets into the presidency that they don't like, instead of their focus being on improving their districts and their constituents' lives, they turn their whole sole focus on impeaching that president and on trying to get them out of office and trying to stop that president from doing good things for the people. I mean, there's only one way we can all go, and that's downhill until the people wake up and they start doing things for themselves. Now, I'm going too long in this video, so I need to end this. But I wanted to title this video, When the Tide Goes Out, You Know Who's Not Wearing Their Swimming Shorts or their swimming trunks, right? They're not wearing their shorts, in other words. And that is a statement from the great Warren Buffett, who's also a Democrat and is kind of supporting the globalists. But he came out with that statement, which is a very good one. It talks about using leverage to short markets to protect yourself from downturns. The tide is the rise in prices. And when the prices go down, if you're not wearing your swimming trunks or your shorts, which is basically a leveraged way of selling the market, you're not protecting yourself from the downside. Most people are only bullish. They only speculate by putting money in something so that the price can rise and they can sell it at a higher price, but they never know how to buy into an asset at a higher price and ride the price drop and buy back in at the lower price, which is shorting the market without actually owning that asset. I mean, that is sophisticated speculation. And he's talking about that as a hedge to your entire asset portfolio. Whether you have these different pipelines that were rising at one time, when the water pressure goes down on those assets, you want to have some kind of thing to protect you as insurance, like a type of insurance, so that it will offset your potential losses. And you can stay in those assets without losing any value, because this one short is actually gaining in value leveraged wise while these are dropping and losing value. So that's sophisticated. And today people are borrowing for all the wrong reasons. They're borrowing only to ride these multiple things up, and we're seeing things like the BitMEX issue, where there is super leverage, like 100 times leverage to Bitcoin. And then the government comes out and says that, and you see exchanges that are getting shut down and government regulators are coming in. So everything is dropping, the cryptocurrencies right now, because people are scared that the price is going to drop and they may not be able to get crypto may not be the place to be. So the government is shaking out all the weak hands. It's okay. I'm fine with that. I'm a strong hand. I'm going to hold it. And when the government comes in and actually starts regulating things, that's the new ground floor, because now everyone will trust that asset class now, because it's now regulated by the government and it has now a chance to fly and take off. All right, so make sure you wear your shorts. A lot of people have not, and so we're seeing a lot of people, they're going to get killed in what's coming. And the liquidity crisis is going to be real bad, because most people borrow for things they don't need. They borrow for wants and not for needs. They use bad debt, as Robert Kiyosaki likes to talk about it, which means you're borrowing money to finance something that does not make money in return. It only costs you money, and it depreciates in value on top of that, and you cannot write off that depreciation. So it's a bad asset. You're using loans to buy a bad asset. That's bad debt. He's talking about using good debt, where you borrow money to purchase something that is paying you back instantly. That's an investment, and it's servicing the debt, right? It's servicing that loan so that you're paying off that loan and you're increasing your credit to the creditor who's looking at you. I gave you this money. Are you paying me back? You're paying me back regularly? Awesome. But the banks today have given loans. They're predatory loans because they want people to owe money, because then they can charge more when you don't pay back. If you only pay your minimum fee, they up your interest rate level because you're a risk now. And this is what's going on in China. The interest rate level's gone up because they can't trust anybody, but they can make a killing off of that. They love it when you can't pay your bill back because they can charge you outrageous, usurious interest rate fees. And this is just going to kill everybody. You know, even the good people who manage, they're going to stop borrowing. They're going to stop financing at some point because, like I said I think it was a video about 3 months ago, I remember when the Fed was raising interest rates, I was like, there's no way interest rates can't go higher. I don't see any other way that interest rates won't go higher because they're increasing the amount of risk for everybody. They're making prices of borrowing things higher, and then people are just using it to buy things that don't finance that don't service that debt. And so there's no way. They're just, the people who are borrowing that money are going to become more and more risky. And the banks, because they're more scared to lend to those kinds of people, or maybe they're not, they like to be predatory lenders, they're just going to keep raising the interest rates to offset the risk of their losing money so that you're all going to have to pay more money when you borrow. And man, oh man, I don't see any good way for this to go. And then the only way, if the Fed really is trying to help President Trump, or if they're trying to save face and not look bad by having the markets crash, they're going to cut interest rates, as Peter Schiff says. And we're already seeing that globally. They're going to just flood the market with cheap money. And that's bad also, because by cutting interest rates and then printing money to service or to provide for everyone to borrow again, making it easy and cheap, quantitative easing, in other words, or what used to be known as money printing, but they don't actually print it anymore. It's just creating money on the computer. You're going to just kill the value of that money. So liquidity crisis is coming. I feel it. And we saw it with Citibank. Citibank is laying off 60% of their workforce. Holy mackerel, that's a lot. Deutsche Bank in Germany, just first they announced they have losses. Now they've increased that loss due to the derivative exposure. Commerzbank is also pretty bad over there in Germany. China's got bank runs started when it comes to Baosheng Bank and Xinjiao Bank. They're bank failures, basically, because people are pulling their money out of the banks. I don't see how this can't end badly, and I don't see how, at first, the solution by these central banks, centralized authorities, communists, in other words, because it's a centrally planned economy, it's not letting the economy function on its own. It's being controlled by people who control the price of things rather than letting prices adjust on their own. I don't see how it's going to end very well. But at first, they're going to flood the market, and it may look okay. It may look fine. We may recover again from this to the point where people don't even notice we're going towards a bad way. But once the value of the money starts to die because of it, then you really got to pay the piper. Then bonds really take a hit because there's no amount of interest that you can get that will compensate you for the amount of value that you're losing in your money. And you're going to see prices go up, especially in food and in energy. So the two things that we need most, because your energy will help you drive to work. It also will help you control the climate in your house when outside the climate is changing. And I agree that there is climate change, but I do not agree that it is carbon dioxide causing it. But that's a whole different video. And your food, because of all the crop failures, you need to eat to survive, to feed your family. And I think famines are coming too. unless some miracle of God allows us to provide for our families, where we find a way to miraculously produce food. I mean, that's what GMO typically did. It allowed for rapid production of food, but that food gives you cancer. And that's the trade-off. And now a lot of people are against GMOs. I'm against GMOs, but you know, if you start to weigh the cost-benefit relationship, if I'm going to die of starvation now, I'll take the risk with the GMO because it allows the supply of food to be there. And I'll take the risk that I'll get cancer at a later date. So I'm going to die later anyway of old age. What if I get cancer when I'm in my 80s? Well, that's about the time most people die anyway. So at that point, I'm willing to gamble with the GMO rather than take the sure thing of dying of starvation today. So that changes my whole perspective about GMOs based upon the environment. But when things are good, I don't want GMOs in our system. I don't want to die of cancer, especially if we have a great bumper crop where the climate changes to be good and things grow well. Why would I want GMOs? So anyway, I'm sorry, y'all. If you hanged out for this long, if you were hanging out with me this long, yeah, much props to you. I mean, hopefully you learned something. It's a funny thing. When I was studying economics, a couple of my economics professors made jokes. They're like, economists talk about efficiency, but they're not very efficient with their words. And I'm a perfect example of that. I talk about being efficient, but it's very difficult to explain. They're easy concepts in economics, but in order for people to grasp it, you kind of have to say more so that they can kind of hear it. And even then, if you're not really familiar with economics, it may be tough to follow. So some of you if you're listening to me for the first time, or even if you have been listening for a long time, but you still don't grasp economics, you might have to listen to this over and over again in order to kind of grasp some of the concepts or a lot of the concepts that I've been bringing up. And that's fine, as long as you learn something. Again, nothing I say here is financial advice or medical advice. I did bring up healthcare, so I don't want to give you any medical advice because I'm not licensed. I mean, in my mind, I'm qualified to talk about it, but in reality, because of our government regulations, I am not qualified to give you advice, and I'm not qualified, and I'm not licensed or credentialed to give you advice. So anything that you decide to do based upon what I tell you is your own risk and your own loss or your own gain. It's not dependent upon anything I say. All I'm doing is trying to entertain and educate you at the same time so that you and motivate you to go learn more. Because in the end, Thomas Jefferson said, to secure the blessings of liberty, you must educate the population, right? That's what I see. I will benefit. It's an external benefit, which is what we call in economics, by my benefiting you in some way, education-wise, skill-wise, motivational-wise, and having you succeed better or succeed greatly, whether I benefit or not directly from whatever, if you become a multi-millionaire or a billionaire based upon what I taught you, or you manage your money better and you're not going into debt, I benefit indirectly by having a better society as people are wealthier and more free, because that makes me more free to make myself more educated and wealthier. So what you give comes back to you. He who gives shall receive, right? That's the way I see it. And you cannot give what you do not have. So I try to give to you guys things so that it will benefit society and our world can improve, because we've had darkness and a lot of idiots running the world lately. They're really driving us into the toilet. And I see a lot of people waking up, but they're waking up to an environment of darkness right now because it was bright and they were asleep. The sun was shining and they were mentally asleep, and they were giving their control to a government person because the communists either shamed them into it by saying, oh, well, if you don't agree with our philosophy, you're a racist or you're a fascist. They call you names to embarrass you or to scare you, to fearmonger you into following them. And then you decided to give your power to somebody else, and that somebody else took your power and abused it, and they stole everything from you, and you may not have been able to even see it because you were asleep. And now you're waking up, and it's a dark world, and it's great you're waking up. Hey, better late than never to wake up, but now you really got to put your head down and hustle and work and be efficient. And my words hopefully will help you do that. So if you like the content that I'm bringing to you, please hit that like button, that thumbs up. Hit subscribe if you're visiting for the first time and you stayed this long. I appreciate your support. Please hit that subscribe button and hit the bell notification. Make sure you're getting all notifications, not just the private ones or none. There is that selection. So make sure you're getting all notifications from me so that you know the next time I post a video, and hopefully I can find a way to stay within my 5-minute constraint instead of going an hour. But I feel like some of these things are really important to lay out so that people understand what's going on. And in the links below, I have my address for any cryptocurrency you want to donate to me. I also have a sign-up link for Coinbase. I like Coinbase the most out of all exchanges. In the end, I don't like exchanges, period, because you're, again, relinquishing your control over your cryptocurrency to an exchange if you're keeping your cryptocurrency there. And exchanges get hacked. Exchanges shut down and steal your money. They go bankrupt. They get regulated and seized by the government. And there's all kinds of problems with exchanges. You don't have control over your cryptocurrency. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. That's a philosophy in commodities, especially gold and silver, where people used to put their money in depositories and the depositories would steal that gold and silver. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. That's true of virtual assets like cryptocurrencies or tangible assets like commodities. Some commodities you don't want to hold, like you don't want barrels of oil in your backyard, but you know what I mean. So make sure if you don't, that's why I don't like trading. Only use Coinbase to purchase and then transfer it to your holding wallet that you hold, and it's secure and no one else can get into it, and it's external from the internet, and you can save it for yourself. And do not trade. I do not advise trading. Again, I'm not an advisor, but trading is gambling. I mean, you're trying to capture everything. There's no way you're going to capture everything. Best thing you can do is when it drops dramatically, if you want that asset, I buy it. When I want it, I buy it. It's like going to the store. When the price drops, it's on sale. Hey, that sweater's on sale now. I'm going to buy it low. And then eventually the price goes back up to normal retail price. Well, that's the same thing with investments. If you're going to speculate where all you're doing is betting on price, it's better to buy it when the price drops, right? And sell it when the price is high. Most people just buy at whatever price and they want it to go up. Well, it may have been going up already and you bought at that price and now it's going down from here. Your chances are better if it's already gone down. It's already gone on sale. So that's what I say to you. And if you've bought it high, then put on your shorts. If you go swimming when the tide is high, you better be wearing your shorts. This is what Warren Buffett says. This is his advice, not mine, right? He didn't even really give it as advice. He gave it as a little story so that people can understand that your short is a leveraged position for the price to drop. So if the tide goes out, you're not swimming naked, right? And most importantly, share this video with everyone you think can benefit from this information. And I appreciate any support that you guys give me. Again, Coinbase to me is the best because you can also get free cryptocurrency by learning about the cryptocurrencies. They have a learning portion. So that link is below. I'm trying to set up different ways that I can monetize this channel because the way I see things coming, we all need to learn to monetize our skills better. Don't sell yourself short. And don't judge people who sell their stuff, sell their skills. Admire them and try to learn what they're doing. This is scriptural. I'm going to go to this scripture. There's a scripture that talks about how the children of light don't know how to deal with money the way the children of the dark do. The children of the dark are taught how to manage money properly. And the children of the light need to learn that. And I always got confused by that reading. And now I'm understanding it more. We need to understand finance, because if we don't, we become victims to it. And, you know, it's like, you know, that it's like the talents also. You know, you need to be able to take that talent and multiply it. So with that, I'm at 55 minutes. I'll try to end it at 56. I appreciate your support. God love you. God bless you. May He bless us all. May He forgive us all our sins. So no matter what happens, whether you survive what's coming or you pass away during it of starvation, may you not suffer much. May you go directly to heaven. Pass the jail, collect $200 and go straight to heaven, right? I don't know if you guys know that reference. Some people don't know Monopoly. All right. Love you. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.